let's give it a
All
go.
right, we'll go.
Yeah.
We'll give it a go, and we see how it goes.
Yeah,
So,
sounds good.
Steve, how are you?
I'm
How's life
good,
in
thanks.
Canada?
Yeah, thank you.
Good. What have you got? What have you got planned? What have you got kind of running in the pipeline? I know you said we tried to do this a couple last week, and you had a jazz gig for, was it Canada
Yeah,
Day?
Canada Day is Canada's birthday. It's like
Right.
U.S. has July 4th, ours is July the 1st. So
Okay.
I had a gig with a trio playing some of my stuff off the latest album. It's a quintet album, so obviously adjustments have to be made. But that was nice.
Yeah.
It was an outdoor concert. It was scorching hot.
Mm-hmm.
And but coming up is a bunch of things are coming up. I've got something called the Prince Edward County Jazz Festival, which
Cool.
is it's a little bit east of Toronto. They do a great job. Have a lot of names in there, and we've got a trio with Duncan Hopkins and Terry Clark, who are both on my album, and we've got a trio gig in the afternoon outside, and then it's a late night jazz, they call it. So it'll be 10 to midnight, which will be fun.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the next one, and a few after that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And how did you get into music?
I have no idea because I was 4, and at 4 you don't really think about things like I'm going to get into anything. You just get into things,
Yeah.
that interest you.
Yeah.
I was 4 years old when I started to play the piano.
Okay. So you right, your earliest memories, you're already playing piano?
Pretty much. I do remember playing piano at age 4. I remember what I played and how I played it.
Okay.
And I
What
played
were you playing?
I was playing Catch a Falling Star by Perry Como,
Okay.
which was on the radio at the time,
Yeah.
a nice little melody. And so I was told later on that I was born with perfect pitch. So whatever I heard, I could pretty well hammer it out. So I went down to the piano. I took my index finger, my right hand, and played the melody on the piano like that. Until
Wow.
that was, and I could hear it. I said, "Oh, that's correct," And I played that for, I don't know, must have been a while, in terms of days or whatever. And then the next step was I took the other hand, so now it's left hand, right hand, and played major thirds. So I had a
Yeah.
harmony going on, which sounded good to me at age 4 with that melody. That's the first memory of playing.
Wow. Okay. And what's your view on perfect pitch? Do you find it a hindrance? Do you
I
find
find it a hindrance. Definitely, it's
really?
a hindrance.
Okay.
Yeah.
How come? How come?
Well, because I know what the notes sound like intrinsically. I don't need a relative note to figure out what the notes are. They have an intrinsic sound to me. So the problem is, can't transpose, right? I mean, normally if you transpose, you say, okay, here's the chart, play it up a minor third. You do that. But for me, if I'm playing up a minor third, it sounds like I'm playing the wrong note. For instance,
Right.
if I'm in C, and I'm going to go up to E flat, start on E flat,
Yeah.
but it's supposed to be C, if you follow me. And I'm playing E flat, and I said, that's an E flat. That's not a C. And trying to play the whole tune like that, it's really, it's very problematic. So that's a hindrance.
Okay.
And another hindrance is when people play out of tune, it's like, just shoot me, because it's just killing me. So, which is not so fun. And, because a lot of people play out of tune. And in terms of the benefits, I'm not sure. I mean, everybody thinks it's really amazing and great and wonderful, and I don't know what else, but I've never seen like huge benefits, because people with great relative pitch, the only difference between me and them is that they just need a reference note. After that, we're equal, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what the big advantage is, to tell you the truth. Sounds
Okay.
cool. Yeah, I got perfect pitch, but.
Yeah. I mean, when I was at college, we had one of the guitar teachers had perfect pitch, and he just said that, look, I can do the trick. I can do the party trick. You can play me a note, any sound.
Exactly.
I can tell you what it is.
Right.
I can do the party trick, but like I can't listen to like the first Van Halen album because it's a quarter tone flat.
Right.
It just
just
grates on me.
Yeah.
Old AC/DC records, really old sort of jazz tunes from the 30s and 40s.
Right.
I can't listen to them.
You don't have to go back that far. You can get on the bandstand on a live band today, listen to the the alto player, and whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, I've never felt the need. Like, I've never thought, wow, I wish I had perfect. Other than that party trick.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
The real party trick is you don't actually identify the note. You just come in cold and they say, okay, sing me a B flat, and you out of the blue sing the B flat, right, without any reference point. But like, so what? Like, where does that get you? Right? Like,
you might get a couple of drinks. That's about it, maybe.
That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So other than perfect pitch, so what does life look like in terms of practicing, in terms of getting better? What's that? What's that like?
Well, practicing, I mean, when I was coming up, I mean, I'm 71 years old. So
Hmm.
there's a different approach to music and practicing now than there was when I was 20. And so
Right.
when I was like, I didn't go to school until I was 22
Okay.
for music school. I mean, so, and I
Yeah.
couldn't read yet. So I was accepted
Okay.
into McGill kind of as a part-time provisional student, but I couldn't read music, which
Okay.
definitely, wasn't going to cut it. So during the summer before that, I had a girlfriend who was a classical pianist, and she basically, crammed me day in and day out to learn how to read, give basic, a basic level of reading before September rolled around and I got into
Yeah.
school. But at that time, I was taking, jazz studies and eventually a jazz degree, and I practiced all day. I literally would get up in the morning, get a coffee, sit down at the piano, practice for however many hours, get up to go to the bathroom, go back, practice some more. And then, pretty much, I would say, 8 or 9 hours a day of practicing during that period. Now, that
Yeah.
was an intense period. And then, of course, I'd be playing gigs at night or going to listen to gigs at night. So it was an immersion
Hmm.
from dawn till dusk of the music. I don't do that anymore, obviously. Now it's more like if I practice an hour a day, I'll be ready for the gig in 4 weeks, kind of thing. And I play differently. I mean, you do change with age, particularly when you're going from 20 to 70. That's a big gap, and a lot changes
Yeah.
in your music and your approach. But in terms of chops, it doesn't take much for me to get an acceptable level of chops back, and then play the gig.
Yeah. Do you find that you've over the years you've lost any technique?
Hard to say. Technique involves, I think, two things. One is the mechanical movement of the fingers, and the
Hmm.
other is the movement of the brain.
Right.
So
Yeah.
sometimes you can play those tempos, those up tempo things with your fingers, but your
Uh-huh.
brain isn't really kicking in the way you want it to in terms of creativity and comfort and relaxed. And, I find that there definitely is a bit of a deterioration, if you will, in my senior years, just in terms of um, the improvisations at up tempo tunes. The creativity
Yeah.
definitely is not as good as it was because I listened to myself. I listened to my debut album, and stuff like that from way back when, and it's like, geez, it's pretty cool. It sounds like, I'm really like very very chop heavy in those days, and
Yeah.
but again, like at this age, I don't really want to. I don't have anything to prove. Like when you're 20, you have a lot to prove, or you think you do,
Yeah.
you know. And you're sitting in, you're going to jam sessions, you're getting people are coming out to your gig, and they don't know who you are, and you feel like I got something to prove.
Yeah.
And so, and chops, of course, is a big part of what you think is a big part of it, and it really shouldn't be. But at my age now, it's more like I want to play the music that sounds good to me, that sounds pretty, sounds beautiful, sounds interesting. And it's like there's less
Hmm.
thinking involved too, which is interesting because so many great musicians have always advised other musicians, like Miles has said the same. He said, when you play, don't think. You can practice
Yeah.
thinking, but you get up in the band session, you got to stop thinking and just play, and allow what's going to come out to come out. So,
Yeah.
that's more of what's going on now for me.
Yeah. And like you said, when you went to music college, you couldn't read. I mean, I find that
Well,
particularly with piano players and keyboard players, is reading is a big part
of course.
of playing.
Yeah.
But
No,
for
I could.
guitar players, like not reading is fairly standard. Like you don't find many good reading guitar players.
I didn't realize that. But certainly in
Yeah.
jazz, you need to read, not sight read.
Yeah.
I'm still always been a terrible sight reader, and that's also, I think, the perfect pitch becomes a liability for sight
Right.
reading. Never been a great sight reader. I need to play it slowly, practice it. It's a funny story about that. I played a gig with Larry Coryell way back when I was in my 20s, and I had 2 nights with him, and it was a local rhythm section and Larry, and he had just written 2 new tunes or 3 new tunes, and he pulled out the charts, and we had a rehearsal that afternoon. This is in Montreal, and he pulled out the
Yeah.
charts, and one of which was an up tempo blues, a line that he had written, and it was like very up tempo, and it was all eighth notes, so it was very challenging
Mm.
to play, certainly to read. And yes, I
Yeah.
went through it at the rehearsal, but when the gig came around that evening, I totally just butchered it really, but it was a unison line with the guitar, right? So
Right.
there's nowhere to hide, and there's no way to sort of like, yeah, that's I meant it that way. No, you didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
You screwed it up. And so I was very embarrassed. And Larry, of course, being, such a gentleman, he never said anything, right? Nothing. Went on to the next tune, didn't nothing. I went home that night and I put that music in front of me and I played it I don't know, 100,000 times until it was burned into my brain. I had fully memorized it. We
Yeah.
got to the gig the second night, and he called the tune, and I totally played it. And in the middle of the tune, like right after the head, we're on the bandstand playing. It's a packed house. He turns to me and he yells out with a big smile, "You memorized that!" You know, because he knew I had memorized
Yeah.
it. I wasn't reading it. I definitely,
Yeah.
so you need to
But
be able to read. Sight reading is important, but not critical. But reading is critical.
mm,
Now, just to make sure we understand, I did enter university reading. I couldn't
okay.
read when I got accepted, which was in the spring.
Yeah.
So over the summer, I started to really, woodshed
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the time fall rolled around, I could read,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know. I just think when I hear of other musicians that can't read, like a friend of mine's an amazing piano player, can't read a note. Everything he does, I just do it all by ear.
Yeah, well,
Everything's by ear.
that's the way I was
And
until I was
yeah.
22. There's no
Yeah.
advantage to that.
Yeah.
Like, sure,
Yeah. I just,
you can do it,
yeah.
but you're just adding another skill, a really important one, if you learn to read as well.
Yeah. I know. I don't know. I guess because guitar reading is tricky because, we've got five middle C's that we can choose from, and it's just a bit of a nightmare. And I think that's why most guitar players shy away from it. But yeah, I taught myself to read 18 odd months ago. I mean, I went to
Oh,
college and I learned to read at college, and then I just forgot. I just didn't use it, and I just thought, you know what? I'm in my 40s now. I'd like to do gigs where I can just turn up, do the gig, read it, and I'm done by 10, and I can go home.
you mean
Theatre
sight
gigs,
reading?
pit gigs.
You're talking sight
Not
reading.
sight, not no, 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 not sight reading. So just reading. So
Mm,
you go home, you practice it, you get the
right.
dots in front of
Yeah.
you, and then you turn up to the show. You have a month to prep for it.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but even that skill is rare for guitar players. You give them the dots, you give them a month, they're like, no, give me the song and I'll learn it by ear.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you're stuck with okay, we're cutting bars 58 to
Yeah. Yeah.
59, and then they're like, well, I don't know what that is. Where is
Yeah.
that? Is
Yeah.
that in
Yeah.
the middle of the
Yeah.
chorus? Yeah. So it's yeah, I found that it's been really useful, and music has just opened up a little bit. So the real book is now something that I can
Sure.
digest
Yeah. Yeah.
and play tunes to. And I actually felt like a proper musician
Right.
sat in an orchestra pit
Right.
with the dots, and
Yeah.
I'm reading and I'm playing, and I'm like, this is great. I
Yeah.
enjoy this.
Exactly. It's very enjoyable. And for composing, you have to read. I mean, if you're going to write
Yeah,
for quintet, which is what I did for that last album, you got to read. You got to, I want to be able to write, and then I want to play stuff back. Like I'm writing on Sibelius now,
yeah,
and that, which is another story. Like reading,
mm.
sure. Software for someone of my vintage, it's new. I wouldn't say it's
Mm.
difficult, but it's brand new. And
Yeah.
so I write first of all by hand on a piece of
Okay.
music staff paper and a pencil. I'll pick up my pencil. I'll write. I can hear it in my head as I'm writing it.
Yeah.
Then I play it on the piano, but mostly I can hear it in my head as I'm writing. And then once I kind of, I'm a race, I got the eraser out and try a few things. Then when it's pretty well at whatever stage, at a stage where I want to continue to work on it, but I'll move it to Sibelius at that point.
Yeah.
I will actually input one note at a time so I can hear it. I don't actually play it on the MIDI because it never gets it right, and then you have to make all the millions of
Yeah.
corrections anyway. So I just put it in one note at a time, and then I continue to have the tune evolve. The harmonies, I can hear them now through Sibelius, even though it sounds like a couple of kazoos playing, but I
Yeah.
can hear the harmony. So I do both. And reading is obviously critical.
Do you think I mean, we spoke of colleges, but do you think there's anything missing today at music education with colleges?
Well, I don't know because when I went to school, I went to McGill University. At that time, McGill University, everything was missing. They had a couple of people doing jazz studies courses, but
Mm.
they were electives, and there was no jazz degree or anything offered. The only music degree was offered in the faculty of music was classical music,
Yeah.
and the classical music faculty was like they were like the military. You couldn't get anything done without proper approval, and what? You're going to play flat nines? Well, we'll have to have a meeting about that and
Yeah.
whatever, right? And eventually, I went to the dean and I said, look, I've been here for a couple of years. I'd like to see if we can put together enough courses that I can get a degree in jazz performance. Not a bachelor of music, but not a bachelor of arts with a major in music, but a Bachelor of
Mm.
Music with a major in jazz performance. And that's what
Okay.
happened. And it took, I don't know, like over 4 years, because going back and forth really against the classical music, brass, I would say, not the musical brass, but the military brass,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
weren't buying it. I actually had to take 3 years of classical theory, 3 full years of classical music theory, not jazz theory. I loved it. I learned all about great music, but there was
Yeah.
just too much, right? So that was
Right.
my experience with universities and colleges. I didn't go to a special school like Berkeley, which was around at the time, or Eastman, or these places that had, solid jazz degrees. I'm sure that would have been better. But I was born in Montreal. McGill was the school. And so, that's what I did. But now I think the people that are coming out of universities now or colleges and doing jazz programs, they're learning way more than I did.
Right.
I think
Okay.
these programs are far superior to what I did, and they're producing some incredible young musicians. That
Yeah.
I guess it's more of them than when I was in
Yes.
university. Like they just come out like a factory, which is not a bad thing. Factories
Mm.
produce a lot of stuff, and factories
Yeah.
maybe not the right word because it implies a sameness. But in the arts, you're just developing all your skills and you're learning how to listen. And I think no, I think the stuff that's going on now, as far as I can see from my distance, which is, a
Yeah.
distance, is much deeper and more useful than what
I think that's great. I mean, I don't know what music colleges are like in Canada or the US, but over here they've kind of like you said, they've turned into a little bit of a factory, and certainly some of the pop music schools
Oh,
that we've got they're essentially now, if you have £9,000, you can come and study. And
oh, there's,
there's the disparity between the top of the class and the bottom of the class is huge.
mm,
And my worry is that the good students and the people that could really go and do stuff and make interesting music are kind of either getting forgotten or left behind, or maybe getting a little bit discouraged. Like, why am I in the class with this kid that is struggling to play a G chord? Why? And I find that a little bit disappointing.
well, so there's no audition process.
There is, but the audition process is something like, from what I've heard from ex-tutors, is, can you play an E chord? Great, in you come.
Right.
Which is, I mean, I think it's a little unfair
I agree.
for the people who
Yeah, for sure.
put the time in, they practice. They don't go out Friday, Saturday nights. They're inside. They're working on whatever it is that needs to be worked on. They're in the same class
Yeah, yeah, no, that's not
with
correct.
people that, yeah,
And I actually taught at McGill after I graduated
hmm.
as an instructor of jazz improvisation, and I was expected to pass every student.
Really,
It was told to me in no uncertain terms, these people are paying real money, and you can give them a C, but you can't fail them.
wow,
And I actually failed one girl. I just didn't think I was doing a service to her by encouraging her. Basically she was hopeless in music.
yeah,
And the sooner she learned that, even though it's not a pleasant lesson, the happier she was going to be finding out what she was really great at.
hmm.
She was very upset, and the school was very upset at me. But it's kind of basic. Like, I mean, if you can't play at a certain level after receiving all the instruction, then you get a D. You can't go on to the next
Yeah,
year, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, when was that? What sort of year was that?
That would have been
Decade?
in the early 1980s.
Right. All right. Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, I think a lot of that is going on in colleges now. Like, nobody can fail. Everybody can get a pass. And
That's
I just
wrong.
think,
I think that's wrong.
I think there's a lot of misguided young musicians wandering around with college degrees
Yeah,
who, I don't know, would struggle over a 12-bar blues.
yeah, yeah.
And it's like, that's pretty standard. So one thing I find really interesting, and I find this with some of my students, like, some kids pick up music really quickly.
Sure.
Some kids just struggle. Why do you think that is? And if I can
There
answer that, I think I'm in for $1 million.
Well, I'll tell you, my take on that is there's a number of reasons, and it's not clear which ones are in play in any given student,
Mm,
why a student would be struggling. A student might be struggling because they just don't have talent. Obviously, your first question is talent is a factor in the arts. I mean,
yeah,
defining talent and quantifying it is difficult to do, but there is such a thing as talent. It's something you just
yeah,
come along with, and then it's what you do with it. I mean, there's a lot of talent
mm,
failures because they think I'm so talented, and then they grow up, and guess what? You're not a kid anymore, and
mm,
you're not growing the way you should at this level, and so the
yeah,
talent can only take you so far. But talent is a great seed to be planted. Now, there's other issues that can come into play as well. If a student is struggling, you can have a talented student who's still
Mm,
struggling. That could be because of personal issues, attention deficit problems, um, personality problems. They're not coming to the class because whatever reason they think they're too good or too bad or whatever. But there's so many things that can come into play besides talent or lack of talent that can cause a musician to struggle. So I think it's the
mm,
role of the teacher. A great teacher should be able to inspire, not just teach, but inspire, to make a student want to do it, to motivate a student to do it, to learn, because it's exciting, because they get infected with the excitement, and they just can't wait to get into it and to dig in. And then guess what? They're going to struggle less because they're
yeah,
motivated.
yeah, yeah. I agree. So it's how big a factor do you think exposure to music is? Because I get a lot of students who they come for lessons and I say, "What music do you listen to?" And they say, "I don't listen to music." And instantly I'm like, "Well, you're going to struggle because rhythms, timing, groupings, notes of four, bars of four, all of these things will just become kind of inherently installed in you if you're just listening to music. You have radio on in the background, you listen to it in the car. If you're not doing that, I think you're going to struggle."
Well, there's a disconnect in that, because the first thing I would want to know is, why don't you listen to music?
Mm.
And, like, if you love music and enough to want to learn music and take lessons, and then why don't you actually listen to this stuff? It's like saying, I want to learn how to be a chef, but I can't stand food, you know?
Yeah, I know.
It's just a disconnect there.
Yeah.
So I would want to know why. There's different types of listening as well. Like when we were
Mm.
kids in the 60s and early 70s, everybody that I grew up with had a stereo system and a turntable
Hmm.
and bought records, and we didn't play music while we were doing something. I mean, you put it on the radio in the car when you were old enough
Yeah.
to drive, but mostly we sat down in someone's living room and put on the Who,
Yeah.
the first record, or the first Led Zeppelin record when it came out. I was like, oh my God, what is that? And we listened like we actually, there was nothing else going on. We weren't,
Yeah.
clicking or whatevers or reading a
Yeah.
book, or we might have been hitting on the girl next to us, but most of the
Yeah.
time we were really intensively listening with great attention and great interest to the music. I don't
Yeah.
see that happening much in this current environment today, because there's so
Mm.
much input, and everything is video. I mean, even me,
Yeah.
when I put up music, it's like I get a few people listening. When I put up video of me playing the music, well, now we're talking, right? But
Yeah.
music doesn't require video. It's sound. It's a sound, right? Sound is what
Yeah.
music is. It doesn't have any visuals except for the person creating the sound, right?
Yeah.
So the problem is, now people find it difficult to listen because they've been conditioned to have lots of other input at the same time as music is going on. This is a
Mm.
this is a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I literally have to write down in their books, here's 3 albums I want you to listen to.
But listen, not while
But
you're doing the laundry, and
yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I
Well,
mean?
I'll say, like, how do you get to school? They're like, well, I take the bus to school. It's like, all right, how long's the bus journey? Well, it's about 20-minute bus ride, and then I've got a 10-minute walk. Okay, so you got 30 minutes. So you can listen if
Mhm.
you've got little headphones or
That's right.
earbuds or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
you've got.
Sit there and
Put the
listen.
album on, you listen to
Absolutely.
it in the car, you listen to it in the bus, you walk to school, listen to it, listen. And it's I just find it so bizarre. Like, why aren't you listening to it? Why are you having lessons if you
Well,
don't
that's the
listen to
second question.
music?
Absolutely. Then you second,
Yeah.
okay, you don't listen to music. Why would you want lessons then? Like,
Yeah.
what's that? Is it your parents want you to, or your girlfriend, or
I I think it's parents.
yeah,
Parents read the studies, they read the articles that
right,
say if you want your kid to be a genius,
right. They need to have
take
music
music
lessons.
lessons.
Yeah.
But the thing is they read other studies that say, if you want your kid to be a genius, they should learn karate, they should learn chess, they should go out for sports. And so they sign their kids up for every single thing.
Hmm.
The kids are getting burnt out. They're doing, music lessons on Monday, football on Tuesday, they have chess lessons on Wednesday, they go to scouts or whatever on Thursday. They got all this shit going on. It's like, well, you're
Yeah.
not actually getting the benefit of anything, really. You're just skimming the surface of everything.
Well, the other question is, why do they want their kids to be a genius?
Yeah.
Is that the main thing they want to
Is
bestow,
that the goal?
or is the question, or should the question really be, how do I create a child that's going to be happy instead of
Mm.
genius? How about a happy kid? Isn't that a
Yeah.
better thing than a genius kid?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but we've got 2 kids and I've not pushed them into anything, and I've just let them gravitate towards the things that they want to gravitate towards, and anything that they show an interest in, it's like, "Well, okay, well, do you wanna
Sure.
pursue
That's
this?"
it. Perfect. Yeah.
And if they say, like, we tried our eldest with piano lessons, and she started doing the grades, and she was like, "I'm just not enjoying it. I
Mhm.
hate it." It's like, "Okay, well, we'll continue with the lessons, but we just won't do the grades. You could just go in, you could just learn simple songs." And she was still so disengaged. I was like,
Mhm.
"Well, then we'll just quit lessons." But she listens to music the same way that I listen to music. It's on. She listens intensely. She sings along. She dances to it. It's like, okay, well, I brought her a guitar for her 5th birthday, and it's sat in her room for 10 years, and it hasn't been played. But the last 6 months, every now and again, I can hear her playing it. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, if she wants to take it further, I can do whatever that she wants. I
Absolutely.
can I could throw everything at her. But the key to for me is I didn't want to push her, because it would eventually she'll get resentful and she'll just
Oh yeah.
quit.
It's not gonna accomplish anything
Yeah.
productive. My
So I
I
just thought
I
I'll leave her to her own devices.
I have a brother, older brother. We
Hmm.
grew up very competitive. He also has perfect pitch, by the way, which is an odd thing. I guess it
Okay.
runs in the family or whatever.
Runs the
Yeah, it
family.
seems to. So, and it's a musical family. My aunt was I had an aunt who was a Juilliard graduate, a concert pianist, and blah blah blah. So, but the point is that they gave him. He was the older brother, so he had all the lessons. They
Right.
signed him up to study with. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was Glenn Gould's teacher. So
Hmm.
he studied with that guy, and he was working hard on his stuff. And they didn't offer me that stuff. I just went downstairs and mimicked what he was learning because I could hear it.
Yeah.
Well, I could play that. And I would play that, but they left me alone.
Mm.
And so I just developed musically naturally without any lessons, without any pressure, without any structure, which
Hmm.
for me seems to have been fine because I got my structure later on in life when I went to university. But prior to that, I hadn't had any lessons and I was gigging, when I was 18, started gigging at 18. But it was, I had learned in a totally organic, unstructured way. So they didn't kill it for me, my parents.
Hmm.
They didn't kill the music out of me. I just
Yeah.
grew as I did. And when I was ready, which obviously took a long time at age 22, I
Yeah.
went for studies.
Mm. No, that's great. And what does your brother do now?
He's obviously older than me, so he doesn't do much, but
Right.
he still plays. He's like a rock guitar player and a keyboard
Okay.
player. He played in bands, and
Right. Okay.
rock and roll bands, and that's but that was always a hobby for him. He didn't
Yeah.
make a living out of it, and he ended up being a psychologist.
Okay.
Actually, he
All
studied in
right.
England.
Okay.
It's funny. He actually
Oh,
studied.
really?
He did a PhD at Oxford.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. And
he's the
well, I
genius of the
guess
family.
I was going to say Oxford. If that would have been around the 70s, 80s.
That was the
They
70s,
didn't. Just,
70s.
yeah. They didn't just let anybody in.
No,
So
no, no.
yeah.
He was a star pupil. He was the genius of the family.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you find navigating social media, Instagram, and all of your reels and stuff like
Ah,
that?
that's a good question. Well, I would say up till recently, I was very social media challenged because
Hmm.
even though I had personal interest in Facebook, just, reading people's stuff and posting stuff and whatever, I never
Yeah.
really thought about it as a useful tool for music, unless I was just putting up a poster. Hey, I'm playing somewhere.
Hmm.
When I put my album out, which was the last album in April of this year, we hired a publicist to get the word out to the world and reviews and airplay and so on. And we also hired a social media manager
Right.
for 3 months at some expense, I might say. And
Yeah.
she took over my accounts. Basically, she was my surrogate and she posted, as if it was me. And just she told me, okay, I need you to make a video of this. It was all about the reels on
Yeah.
Instagram. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. I want it to be this long. And basically, after 3 months, I was getting, instead of like 100 views on these videos, I was getting thousands of views on the videos. And
Right.
and so basically, she taught me a lot by doing it and sort of instructing me so that now the contract is over and she says, okay, well, you got everything you need to keep going. And
Hmm.
she's right. Because now I post 5 days a week on Instagram.
Yeah.
I mix it up with these fun kind of, here, I'm improvising on this. Do you know what tune it is? I
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15,000 views on those things. And
Yeah.
which is a whole lot different than I was getting. Followers, of course. And then I intersperse it with, like, I would say the important stuff, like I'm playing somewhere. I got a
Yeah.
review, which only gets maybe 500 views. Like nobody cares about that stuff, the important stuff. But
Yeah.
it's 500 more than I was getting. And it's not 10,000 like the other stuff is, or 5,000.
Yeah.
And that's actually growing every time I put up a new one. but people eventually transfer over to, okay, what is this guy doing, and what is that album he keeps
Mm.
talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'd say I'm a lot more comfortable with social media now, but I needed some help.
Okay. Do you think it was worth it getting the social media manager?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
I would have had nothing happen.
Okay. Because I have this conversation with multiple musicians, people I'm out gigging with, and it's like I should do more with reels and stuff. I should, but I just can't be bothered. I just don't have the motivation to do it. And I think maybe getting somebody to do it for me would be
Yeah,
a
exactly.
great
Do it
idea to
for
just
you.
just
Yeah.
just to get the ball
Just
moving.
to get the ball. It was a 3-month thing, and, yeah, exactly, get the ball. But also, I was involved, like, I had to make the videos. She told me
Yeah.
what to say. She even scripted
Yep.
them at the beginning, so I literally said exactly what she wanted me to say, but those were terrible because they were scripted and they looked scripted, and after a while,
Yeah.
she said, "Okay, this is the kind of thing I want you to do," and I would just ad lib it.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, I'm a jazz musician. If I can't improvise a video, what's going on, right? But yeah, it was worth it. But it also was around a new album release. It wasn't just, okay, I'm going to get
Yeah.
a manager to get my profiles up. I had a new album on. It was very exciting. They were getting great reviews all over the place, and in England, of course, as well. And so there was a focus and a reason to get
Yeah.
someone involved. Like,
Okay. And what was her name?
her name is Jenna. I just called her Jenna.
Jenna.
Jenna, what the hell was your last name, Jenna? Oh, she's gonna kill me. But she's
Oh
actually a
man.
singer. I'll send you a link
Oh really?
afterwards, and,
Do
she
it.
has a
Yeah.
tremendous following, and she's got a great voice, very
Yeah.
unusual approach, and, yeah, very, very cool.
All right. I'll do that. I'll do that.
Jenna
I'll hook her up.
Marie.
All right. I'm sure you'll find it. Send it
Yeah,
over.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the other thing I was going to ask is, do you think anyone can play music if they're determined enough?
Well, it depends on the level of music you expect them to play. Anybody can play music,
Okay.
but, I mean, how
To a good level, like they can get up on stage and gig.
get on stage? Could anyone get to that level?
Yeah.
In jazz or in general?
Just in general. Let's say
In
pop
general,
music.
yeah, I think so, because a lot of music is it's not complicated, in rock music, there's a couple of chord progressions that are gonna set you going, you're gonna sound good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's all there is, but you can sound good learning a few set chord progressions, voicings on the instrument, feel. I mean, if the person's motivated, again, you're
Yeah.
not gonna get them to any level if they're not, like, hungry to do it. But yeah, I'd say in those situations, most people could do that. I think in jazz, or certainly in jazz, it would be much more difficult, because even
Hmm.
a basic level of improvising jazz, in a way that's at a certain level, is requires an incredible commitment of time and years,
Mm.
really. And it's got to saturate the person for those particular years. Nobody is going to want to do that if they're not, you know, disposed towards it to
In love
begin
with
with.
it.
So,
Yeah.
and it's improvised music, like fully improvised music on a structure
Yeah.
usually, but unlike rock and roll or a lot of pop music. Yeah, there's a degree of improvisation that can happen, but it's still a very structured harmonic and melodic progression.
Mm.
Whereas in jazz, it's much more difficult to create in the jazz language.
Yeah.
Music's a language. There are different languages. There's different vocabulary in these languages, and jazz is a very broad and deep vocabulary, and that's why a lot of people don't like it, because they don't know
Mm.
the language. To them
Yeah.
it sounds like gibberish. Why? Because they don't speak the language. If somebody talked
Yeah.
Swahili to me, I wouldn't sound like anything. But if I took the time to start listening to syllables and sounds, and learned a little bit about it, all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, it's beautiful poetry. It sounded like nothing.
Yeah.
Jazz is like that.
Yeah. And if somebody like, because I'm very new to jazz. Like I tried jazz, like my whole sort of music career. I've dipped my toe into jazz, and the thing that I struggled with the most was trying to get that language across convincingly. And it wasn't until I realized that I just didn't listen to enough jazz that it just never was going to sound authentic. It was always going to sound like someone was bluffing it and just trying to
Yeah,
shortcut it.
yeah.
So if somebody wants to get into that world, where would you set them? What albums would you set them up with?
Well, first thing is I set them up with a teacher or a mentor, somebody to say,
Mm,
okay, listen to this track on this album, and then we're going to move on to this. Like, you need a guide, basically. You don't have to have a
yeah.
person teaching you technique on the instrument, but you need some sort of a guide. Initially, I came to jazz because I wasn't always a jazz musician. When I was a
Mm,
teenager, I was into rock and folk, and Beatles and Led Zeppelin and
yeah. Yeah.
whatever. That was it. And jazz was gibberish to me. And
Mm.
then I started to get into this new thing they called it jazz rock or jazz fusion. That's
Yeah.
how I got into it. It was like, oh, this is cool. It's more interesting. It's more um, complex. It has more depth, but it's still within my realm of rock, right? I can
Yeah.
still kind of put that together. It wasn't a complete transition from rock into like Charlie Parker. It wasn't like that.
Yeah.
But and so it was like Herbie Hancock had come out at that time in the 70s with Headhunters and
Yeah.
all that fusion stuff. That's what I was into and that's what I played. When I went to McGill and started my studies there, the reason I started at McGill is because I met a jazz piano player. And I remember a friend of mine had said, why don't you go and meet this guy and just, see what he's got. So he was running the jazz studies program. Armis
Okay.
Meisty. He's still alive. He's in his 90s.
Okay.
And I'll never forget. I walked into his little studio he had a piano there in McGill. And he says, "Oh, nice to meet you. Play something for me." I thought, well, okay, I'm going to dazzle him, right? So I sit down,
Mm.
like, I got all my chops flying around. And I'm playing, and I think I'm really like, the cat's meow. And I go, yeah,
Yeah.
he's going to really like this. So he says, oh, I finish. He goes, oh, very nice. Very, very interesting. Very nice. He says, let me show you a couple of things. So he sits down and he plays stuff I had never in my life heard. And it wasn't dazzling. It was just harmonically so far advanced that my entire, not just my ears, but I mean, I think all my molecules went, like just
Yeah.
never heard that. The voice, he started laying down these voicings, these thick, gorgeous, bebop voicings, like deep. It's like, what is that? And then he started to play some, melodic. Anyway, I had never seen that up close, not on the piano. It's different when someone's playing it in front of you
Mm.
in an intimate environment to show you stuff. It's not like listening
Yeah.
to a record. Anyway, at that point, I was like, okay, I want to learn that. I want to learn what
Yeah.
this is. And that was the beginning of the complete transition out of popular music into jazz. And it was still guided. I didn't just kind of start listening to records. He told me what to listen to. He said, come
Yeah.
back and tell me what you heard. And then it was like, okay, I want you to I want you to transcribe the first chorus of Bill Evans's solo on this or Bud Powell on that. And
Yeah.
the act of doing that, of actually listening to a record, and it was only vinyl in those days. You had to pick up the bloody
Yeah.
tone arm and put it back down, and you never got it
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
whatever. And you got some sheet music and a pencil, and you're trying to hear and write down. And my reading was horrible. Write down the solo, the melodic line for whatever
Yeah.
16 bars, and come back to him. But the benefit of doing that was incredible. Like it was a deep
Mm.
opening that could happen just by doing the transcription of a simple jazz, bebop line. Totally, so, and these are things I would never have thought to do. So you need someone to guide you.
Yeah. And how about records? If you wanted to set somebody up with a couple of records to listen to.
Well, in general, I mean, to me, I know jazz begins in the 20s, but the jazz that I listen to begins in the 40s with
Yeah.
bebop, Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, um, Dizzy Gillespie, progresses into the 50s and 60s with Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and so on. So for me, it depends on the person. I might start them off in the fusion stuff so they could listen to a little bit of that. But it's really, you want to listen to stuff that's clean. It's not too embellished or too fast. You want to be able to
Mm.
hear what they're playing. So I would definitely recommend Bill Evans trio, early trio recordings. There's one of his
Yeah.
first albums called Everybody Digs Bill Evans. I would definitely listen to Charlie Parker because there's no one on earth that ever
Mm.
played like that. I mean, when I first heard Charlie Parker, I was like, and then I read his biography, I couldn't wait to get to the next page because it was so exciting
Yeah.
how that happened. I mean, I don't know if you
Mm.
realize it, but bebop begins in jam sessions. Before
Right.
that, they were playing swing music and swing bands. And some of these guys, like
Yeah. Yeah.
Charlie Parker, they would go to a place in New York City called Minton's, after hours place, and they would start to open up and sort of create. This is how this music was created, was not
Right.
in somebody's basement with some, rehearsing or talking or whatever. It was on the bandstand in front of a live audience in the middle of the night. They would go and they'd play out their stuff that they've been working on, and they'd interact between them, and like a brew of some kind was happening at Minton's. And this is how it all
Mm.
begins. It's an incredible thing. It was very organic. So I would
Yeah.
recommend listening to Charlie Parker, Bill Evans. Those are great places to start.
Yeah. It's I mean, I actually had I had to take my daughter to the dentist today, And she said, "Oh, can we listen to some music?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I put on Freddie the Freeloader
Yeah.
because she was talking about she was going through like 12-bar blues at school. I was like, "Okay, so what's going on here? What's this chord progression?" Like the first chord, I think, was B flat. She
Mhm.
said, "It's B flat. What's the next chord?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't know." I was like, "Well, what do you think it is?" She's like, "Four." I was like, "Yeah, it's the four
Mhm.
chord."
Mhm.
He's like, "Oh, and what about the next one?" The next one's really tricky. I was like, "It's a flat six, so it's a flat six moving to the five, and then five back to one." I
Mhm.
think I was trying to do it from memory. Initially, she was just like, oh. Like she's 13, nearly 14, so it's like, oh. And she was like, "Put it back to the beginning." I was like, "Just try and sing that melody. Just try and sing that line." And she put it back on. She's there, and she's just singing to it. And I just let her go. And I said, "Do you do this kind of stuff at school, like listening to songs and trying to figure out what's going on?" She's like, "No, not at all." She's like, "We should. You should."
Mhm.
And so it's like that introduction to jazz, I think, is like, because I never had it. Both my parents listened to a lot of music, but it was like U2, the Eagles,
Sure.
Zeppelin,
Great
Simon and
music.
Garfunkel, like
Nothing wrong
great
with
pop
that.
music,
Yeah.
but it never evolved past that. And
Mhm.
so I think giving, like, every now and again, I'll just throw on like a Ella Fitzgerald tune or a
Mhm. Yeah.
some Miles Davis or something like that,
Yeah.
just so that you can dip your toe in and just sort of get used to listening to that kind of sound. But yeah, it was cool. It was nice. It was nice to have a listen and listen kind of intently, not just have it
Intent,
on as
yeah,
the
with
back in the
intention, yeah,
background.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and singing, try to sing a line
Mm.
is a great exercise, like, if you can sing along with, let's say, the melody of, Bill Evans', whatever section, B section, try to sing it,
Yeah.
you know? Because one of the things that I always teach my students is unless they're horn players, but otherwise to sing as you play, right?
Yeah.
To sing the line you're playing, and you can be a horrible voice and terrible singer.
Mm.
The idea is it's not just your fingers wiggling on the keyboard from your brain. There's a little midman there, a little midsection called singing, and it's
Yeah.
very difficult to sing a boring mechanical line. It's easy to do that with your fingers, but if you're singing it, it becomes instantly more lyrical and more melodic, more enjoyable in a lot of ways. So if that's the filter that from your brain to the fingers, if it has to go through your voice, hey, guess
Mm.
what? You're kind of forcing your fingers to play differently in a much more lyrical way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the name of the guitar player now. George Benson does that. He
Yeah, he does
plays and
that a
sings
lot.
all
Yeah,
of his lines.
yeah,
And I think somebody asked, I don't know if somebody asked him or somebody asked one of our tutors, does he sing what he plays or does he plays what he sing?
right,
And
right,
he
right.
just said, he said
He said what?
yes.
Yes to what?
He does both. So it's
Oh,
obviously he's singing and
yeah.
playing.
Yeah, George is a little bit of an unusual one because he's got a
Mm,
good voice, a good singing voice, so he's doing that as
yeah.
part of his performance. But if you ever listen to Oscar Peterson or somebody like
Right.
that, where he's playing all this beautiful stuff and all what you hear is he's going like literally like
Yeah.
that's singing in his ears, in his mind. That's his singing voice. He's actually singing those
Right.
lines. So obviously, he's not singing along with the
Yeah.
piano. He's creating with his voice and it's coming out of his fingers. A lot of musicians do
Yeah.
that. It's unintelligible singing, but it's really singing in their head.
Okay. I think that's something that I need to practice.
Oh, it's a great exercise.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask is what isn't practice?
What isn't?
Yeah. What isn't practice?
What isn't practice?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like if you had to define what practice, like, because I think a lot of people say that they're practicing, but
Oh,
what they're
I see.
actually doing is fumbling around.
Ah, I see. I see. Well, just the very fact that you're picking up the instrument and playing it is a start, you know?
Mm.
Even if it's fumbling around, you're getting more of that than, getting back on your phone and texting and posting, right? So that's
Yeah.
shouldn't be underestimated, although it's not very effective. So
Yeah.
practicing should be, well, not even should, but practicing normally is some form of playing where you are working on something, we used to call it woodshedding. You're going out to
Yeah.
the woodshed, which
Yeah.
means you're by yourself. You don't have an audience. It's just you, and you're going to work on some stuff. So it's like, meaning, I want to play this kind of line, but it never comes out right. Why not?
Mm.
Let's get the fingering right. What's wrong with my fingering? Why isn't this working? Let me get this to be fluid and easy. That's typically what we call woodshedding. You get a lot of benefit out of that. But practicing also can
Yeah.
be with other people. You can have a couple of people over. Hey, let's run through some of these tunes. And there's no one else listening, but you're getting to listen to other people. Jazz is a lot to do with listening as opposed to just playing. So while you're
Mm.
playing. I mean, while you're
Yeah.
playing, you're listening to yourself, but if you're playing with other people, good jazz musicians are always really listening to other people. They know exactly what they're playing. They're paying less attention to their own playing in a lot of ways than the people around them. They're listening
Yeah.
intently to what's the drummer playing, what's that bass player line, what's going on there. You're comping behind a horn player or you're a horn player, whatever. You're listening to other people. That's a form of practicing. I think
Yeah.
what isn't practicing is anything where you're playing absent-mindedly and something else is going on. Like, I'm going to play piano, but meanwhile, I'm looking over here and I see there's something on the tube on the television.
Yeah.
That's definitely not practice.
Yeah. And what about getting better? What does getting better look
Okay,
like
getting
for
better,
you
which is
today?
the soul of your program, I see, right? Getting
Yeah.
better. Well, getting better, improving, I think probably one of the main things is consistency.
Hmm.
I used to do, I'm 71, but I used to do other things besides play music. One of which was I was a competitive bodybuilder and I was
Okay.
in, competitions and I was pretty good, and people wondered, how did you get that physique like that, And I'm a vegetarian. So that was even more of a weird thing. How did
Right.
you get a physique like that? And it was consistency. I didn't just go to the
Yeah.
gym. I went to the gym with intention. I knew what I was going to do. I knew why I was doing it. I knew what this exercise was going to do for me. And I didn't kind of do it every now and then when I felt like it. So if you want to get
Yeah.
better in music, the first order of business is consistency. I'm going to get better, and this is how I'm going to do it. You know, you should have a bit of a plan, map it out a little bit. You have a desire to get better is probably the first thing. Do you want to get better? No, I don't care. Okay, well,
Mm.
that's not going to work. But yes, I
Yeah.
want to get better. How do I do that? Great. Okay. So there should be a consistency. I'm going to practice this many hours a day. I'm going to play this stuff here. I'm going to work on transcriptions. I'm going to work on some ear training. Whatever it is, it doesn't really, in a way, I mean, it matters, but in a way it doesn't. It's about the consistency. It map something out and you try it consistently for what I would call 8 weeks is the magic
Hmm.
number. Eight
Yeah.
weeks is very, we did that in bodybuilding too. You're not going to see an effect in bodybuilding before 8 weeks. So
Yeah.
you're kind of doing it on faith for 8 weeks. That's a discipline in itself. But 8 weeks is enough time where it's not completely daunting that, oh, I can't possibly do this for 6 months. Yeah, but you can do it
Yeah.
for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And don't be over ambitious if you want to get better. I want to be great. Great. Okay. But don't be over ambitious in terms of your tasks at hand. You would basically map something out. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to stick with it. I might make some minor adjustments. I don't have to be too rigid, but I'm going to stick with it for 8 weeks. And then I'm going to assess. So
Hmm.
8 weeks later, it's like, okay, I should have a recording of what I played like before and a recording of now so that
Yeah.
I can actually really hear the difference, see what happened, what didn't happen, make some adjustments. But to me, getting better is making a reasonable plan in a reasonable amount of time, which is not too long and not too short. And that's why I say eight
Yeah.
weeks. That to me means getting better.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the most concise answers I've got. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're going on tour, you're allowed one album, one book, and one movie. What are you taking?
Oh, gosh, this sounds remarkably like, do you get Stephen Colbert where you live? Late night TV.
So I've seen him around.
Okay, he does a
We don't
thing
get.
he does a thing called the Colbert Questionnaire where he has a set of questions that he asks his guests,
Okay.
and this sounds like, he actually has a question like that. That's why I'm laughing. He has a question to
Okay.
somebody like, if you could only listen to one album for the rest of your life, and it doesn't
Oh
even
no, we're only going on tour for a month or
a
two.
month, okay, well, this is much more reasonable. Okay. So, a month and a half, you said, or a month?
Yeah, month and a half.
Okay. So, and the question again is one album, one
One
movie, and
record,
one
one
record, one
book,
movie, and what else?
one book.
One book.
Yeah.
Well, if I had one book, it would have to be that's a good one. I hadn't thought of that. I didn't expect that.
Mm. Yeah.
That's a surprise. One book I would say would be, I mean, my favorite book of all time is a very specific translation of War and Peace by Tolstoy. I would take that book with me.
Okay.
That's just,
Okay.
I could read that a million times. And
Okay.
it's an incredible book. Okay, so there's my book. Okay, got that. One album and what was the other one? Oh, movie out
Movie.
of the way. One movie that I'm going to see over and over. Man, that sounds really boring. What would I want to see over and over that wouldn't be too boring? A movie. Probably it would be either Moonstruck
Okay.
with Cher and can't remember his name. You ever see it?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's an old movie, and it's
Okay.
it's a classic. It's a killer movie. Okay, let's stick with that. That would be it. I could do that for a month.
Okay.
And then an album. The only album that I would want to have for a month. Okay, let's see. That would have to be well, it's sort of a toss up. And they're two very different eras of music. One would be Everybody Digs Bill Evans, which
Okay.
is an incredible record. And the other would probably be one of those Miles Davis later records, not too much later, but kind of like Kind of Blue. That would be the other one.
Yeah, that's a great choice. All right, okay, Steve. Thank you very much for your time. I really do
Oh,
appreciate it,
it's
and
been a pleasure.
I wish you all the best with your album and your and tour. And if you are over in the UK anytime soon, please drop me a message and let me know. It'd be great to hook up for a curry or a coffee or a beer or something.
Sounds great. May I have
Mm,
one plug for my album before I
of
depart?
course. Yeah.
So I put out a brand new record, came out in April. It's the name of the band is the Steve Holt Jazz Impact Quintet.
Okay.
It's got some great musicians on it. Kevin Turcotte on trumpet, Perry White on saxophone, Terry Clark on drums, Duncan Hopkins on bass, and myself on piano. It's also a bunch of new compositions that came fresh out of the cellophane for this record. And the album is called Impact. It's available on all streaming platforms and also on Bandcamp, where I sell it, and or you can download it. And I'd really love it if you took a listen. That's that.
I certainly will. Brilliant. All right. Thank you very, very much for your time, and we will speak soon.
You're very welcome. All right. Have a great evening.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Okay.